Hello and welcome to Conversations with Rich. I'm Rich Massabny. As you know, if you've been following this show for the last 30 years, I usually do it in 3 segments. And I feel particularly privileged today to have with us Dr. Stephen Farber. He's come from out west, out in Texas. He has a long story. He's a cardiologist, and he's written a book, you'll see that on the screen, As Sick as Our Secrets. You got secrets?
I've had a few, and I wrote about them.
I know you've had a sort of tough experience. How long were you a cardiologist practicing before you got yourself hung up on alcohol and drugs?
I practiced for about 25 years.
Before this happened to you?
Yes.
Wow. Now, you got involved with alcohol. Were you a drinker before, or?
Well, the ironic part about this is that I never drank in college, and most people who become addicted to drugs and drink heavily start at a pretty young age. And for me, I didn't really start until my 50s.
That's unusual, isn't it?
It is. I think for me, a lot of it was a result of accumulation of stress over many, many years and burnout. And I discovered later, when I was going through rehab programs, that a lot of people lose their coping mechanisms when they reach the age of 50. That the things that had worked for them for their whole life suddenly deteriorate as they get older. So what happened to me was really not that unusual.
I've known over the years a couple of, one's a PhD and one is a MD, who were in rehab because actually one was in a hospital getting rehabilitated from alcohol or whatever it is. So even though you're MDs and you do great stuff as a cardiologist, you're human. And
Exactly.
You can have the same things I have.
Exactly. One of the messages that I have for people, especially in the medical profession, is doctors are human. A lot of times I think people tend to put doctors on pedestals or think that we're superhuman, almost like Superman, and that we could change our clothes in phone booths and run to the next emergency and perform miracles. And doctors are human, and unfortunately we're prone to depression, burnout, and a lot of the same things that other people have in other professions, and if anything more so. I discovered, really to my surprise, that about 15 to 20% of doctors are addicted to something or are alcoholics. Yes.
I know about alcohol, but what kind of drugs did you use?
I started with Xanax, which was a prescription drug that was left in my office by Pfizer in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. And at the time, they labeled it as a safe drug, in quotes, non-addicting drug. And so I decided I was under a lot of stress, and I decided I was going to try it out on myself. And before I knew it, I discovered that Pfizer was wrong, that the drug is extremely addictive. And drugs like that are in the family of drugs related to Valium, which we call benzos, are all addictive, especially ones that have a short half-life like Xanax does. So before I knew it, I was dependent upon it and needed it whenever I left home. It's like my American Express card. I couldn't leave home without it.
Right.
And I required higher and higher doses of it.
And what about the booze? Was that going on simultaneously?
Yes.
Xanax and booze?
Yes, it was. The booze was sporadic over many years. And unfortunately, part of my life as a physician was I spent a lot of hours in the hospital, and my personal life suffered as a result. And I went through several divorces. And usually at the times of stress with my divorces, I started to drink fairly heavily.
How many times were you married?
3.
Yeah. So that and the medical practice and booze and Xanax and other stuff, I mean, that's a full life. Now, when I was reading your book, and maybe I don't know if we put it up on the screen, As Sick as Our Secrets, by Dr. Stephen Farber, MD. This is the secrets. What you say, as sick as our secrets. In other words, your secrets were that you were addicted. That's what it's all about, right?
Yes, that's correct. And we are really as sick as our secrets. I was carrying around incredible secrets for a couple of years before my license was suspended. I was like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I had an external appearance of this successful physician. Well, inside I was really in a really bad place. And I hid my addictions from other people, even my closest friends. and my girlfriend at the time didn't have a clue that I was on drugs.
No kidding.
They didn't, and I hid it extremely well. And it's, in retrospect, it's kind of scary how good I got at it.
Well, the thing is, too, when you were coming back and being rehabilitated, and you are already, you're just waiting for your application again for reinstatement. Is that what we're
That's
waiting?
correct. That's correct.
And
yes.
you got such now experience. I would think you're even a better doctor now, it seemed to me, than you were, say, 20 years ago. Because you can appreciate and you know what booze and drugs can do. And you've beat it.
Well, I have a lot of compassion for people that were in a similar situation to me, and I think other professionals or busy people who are under a lot of stress and anxiety are prone to the same problem. And addiction is rampant in our society. It's an epidemic, especially prescription drugs. And it's something that as a society we really need to address. And the purpose I had in writing A Cigar Secrets was really to reach out to people and try to let them know that there is an answer to addiction, and that recovery is very, very possible, and that there is hope. And my own personal situation is that I've been sober now for almost 7 years, and I'm in the process of reapplying for my license to see patients, and I'm this close. So hopefully, within the next 6 months, I'll be able to get back.
Well, who's ever making that decision, was it in Texas?
Yes.
It'd be crazy if they didn't take you. I said you're a better doctor now than you were, in my opinion, before I ever knew you, 10 years ago. Because you now have the understanding of what alcohol and drugs can do. And you beat it.
That's right. I think I've learned how to live my life with more balance, I think, in general. And I think if you, the healer needs to heal the healer. There needs to be, and I think that I think that you can't help somebody else if you are sick inside yourself. And I think that was my situation, is that I was sick inside with an illness that I think that was well hidden, and that I think now that I feel healthier, and I feel more capable of being able to help others too.
Oh, I would say you're a better doctor. Did I understand from your book, Dr. Farber, that you sort of found God or something, or God's an important part of your life now? Did I misread that?
No, you're right.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Absolutely right. For me, the darkest periods, darkest times of my life were when I had no religious or spiritual compass at all. I wavered for many, many years between, a couple of different ways of looking at God. I grew up really almost resenting him, because I felt that he was forced upon me. And with some traumatic incidences that occurred when I was young, I actually resented him and felt that he was to blame for things that had happened to me early on in my life, and for everything that was wrong in my life. I blame God for that. And I never had a connection with him. I tried going to synagogue, church, I tried everything I could think of, but never could establish that relationship. And in my recovery, I've had a really good chance to examine my relationship with God. And the 12-step program is based upon a relationship with, in quotes, a higher power.
Right.
And for me, it's God. And some people may call it Buddha or something else. But for me, it's essential to have that relationship. And I think that to feel spiritually connected to God is essential to be in recovery, to be able to feel love, to love yourself.
What about an atheist? They could have the same booze problems and drugs, and a person's an atheist. What do they do then? There's no God or Buddha or anybody to look to.
Well, I'm not going to say that an atheist cannot recover. I think that certainly is present, but I think the 12-step program itself is based upon the willingness to look at a power that's
beyond
yourself. Beyond yourself. Whether it's, the example they use is even a light bulb, or the power of an AA group. So they have actually a chapter in a book they call the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous that's addressed to agnostics and atheists.
Oh, okay.
And to describe to them that all it takes is a willingness to look at the possibility that there's God. And I think that it's people need to go into this with an open mind. And I think that's all that's required. And they're wanting to get better. I mean, you have a choice. I had a choice 7 years ago. Do I want to live or do I want to die? And it was as simple as that. And I chose to live. And but in order to do that, I had to embrace certain principles in the program. And for me, a big part of this was embracing the Spirit of God in me and developing a relationship with Him.
You're a bigger man for it, even though, like I said, I didn't know you before today. But I've interviewed over the years couple of other television shows I've been on, about 4,000 people in 30 years. And I could tell talking on the phone with you, I sense something. And I see it here. You're an all right guy. I hope I wouldn't need a cardiologist to look me over.
I hope not.
But I'd run to a guy like you.
Well, thank you.
Because you'd have an understanding. Did you make that pitch to the people at the board in Texas? I mean, do they realize that you're a better doctor today than you could have been 20 years ago?
Well, I think they've seen that I'm doing the hard work, and being sober and doing everything that they've asked me to do. And that as a result of that, over 7 years, they realized that I deserve an opportunity to get back to work. So I think the hard work and tenacity that's required of somebody to be sober and to turn their life around, I think, is coming back.
Let me just tell you, I got to tell you, I don't know, just because you're a doctor and a cardiologist. About 2 years ago, a friend of mine, I'm a critic around town in arts and whatever it is, and I was visiting some woman who was friends with this physician who was in his 60s, cardiologist, and he was late for the luncheon. And so he got there 45 minutes late, didn't call nothing. So, what was wrong, Doc? He said, well, I was with a patient who had to go to the hospital. So I said, what's wrong? And the reason I probe so much is I'm a frustrated guy who did not become an MD. I've studied over the years, for 40 years, I've been studying medical books. So I tell the guy, the doctor, I said, what was wrong? He said, well, he had some bleeding in his stomach. I said, okay. I said, did he have congestive heart failure? He said, yes, he did. I said, simple. He had esophageal varices. And he looked at me and said, how the hell do you know that? I said, just reading about it, that's all. So I admire what you guys do so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you a phone number. Is that okay, Doc?
That's fine.
Okay, on the screen,
fine.
we're going to put your phone number, 832. Is that Texas?
Yes.
832-585-3223. And there's an email thing here for, it'll be on the screen, sfarbermd at sbcglobal.net, right?
That's correct, yeah. Yes.
So there, it's up on the screen, Doc. So anyway, you're looking for a good cardiologist. Now I want to know from you, as soon as you get your authorization to continue practicing.
Absolutely.
That'd be
You'll be
crime,
one of the first to hear.
Would you? Because that'd be a
Absolutely.
crime. If any, you can't imagine them saying no, could you? After all you've done.
Well, the board is tough. They're out to protect the people of the state, and I think that they're doing their job. But, I think all I can say is that I think I deserve the opportunity, and I'm hoping I'll get it.
You seem like a nice guy.
Well, thank you. So do you.
Thank you. Yeah, someday I'd like to put on a white coat and walk down a hospital and with a stethoscope in my pocket, and I'll bet you I could pull it off.
I bet you could. You
really
look very
can.
doctorish.
Yeah. But it worries me now because I do drink bourbon. If I put a drink in front of you now, would you start shaking?
Not at all.
No, no more, huh?
Not at all. It doesn't trigger me anymore if I'm around somebody who drinks. And, I think the key is moderation. The problem with an alcoholic is they can't just drink one drink.
Yeah.
And they continue. So, my hat's off for people who can drink one or two and then just stop.
Yeah. What, in the time we got, just tell me, Doc, are there